Hello friends, welcome to IT Job Pulse. Today is 23rd video of a PMP training program and today's topic is stakeholder engagement and mapping. Identifying, analyzing and engaging stakeholders effectively. So we are going to be covering as usual Waterfall, Agile Scrum and hybrid methodology. So let's begin with first that is Waterfall. And in Waterfall, stakeholders are like wedding guests. Everyone is invited upfront, and you hope they show up. So it's an example like when we uh, like plan wedding, then we make a list of the guests, right? So some of the guests they don't show up in corporate life, in the projects also. It happens the same that sometimes stakeholders don't show up. Requirements frozen day one. In Waterfall, we are aware that we do not change the requirements once requirements are frozen. And in line with that, engagement is formal and phase driven. What is the meaning of formal and phase driven? We don't have any change to be accepted in Waterfall. And unless and until we complete first phase, we cannot go to the second phase, same like third, fourth, fifth. So that is what the waterfall is about. Works best when no one changes their mind, which never happens in waterfall. Definitely, even if it is a waterfall, stakeholders change their mind, not because they want to change their mind, because of the circumstances of the business. They want to change the requirements. But in waterfall, if you go for a requirements change, then it's a straightforward no. And in some rare cases, I'm using the word in some rare cases, the requirement change is also accepted, but there is a lot of approval process and complications are involved. And then if the change request gets approved, then only uh, requirements are changed in waterfall. But let's say a project is running for a 1 year time, then hardly one or two times, maximum two times, change can be accepted. Otherwise, it's not possible. Why did the stakeholder bring a ladder? Because updates were always high level. So, guys, if you remember the greatest of the joke all time, that is, what is Jira? So, one of my candidates, he said in the interview, Jira is a South Indian dish. So whenever I remember this, Jira is actually tool, and the candidate said in the interview that it is South Indian dish. Again, this is also a joke. Why did the stakeholder bring a ladder? You don't have to stay, you don't have to communicate this in the interview. Documents you need, that is waterfall. Stakeholder register, who's who, influence plus interest. Let's say we have a director, so he's the major influencer in terms of decisions. It can be anyone. Just an example I'm giving, who's who and what is the interest. RACI metrics, because blaming the intern isn't scalable. What is the full form of RACI? That is responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. Okay. So the purpose of racimetrics is to understand uh, who is responsible for what, same way accountable, consulted, and informed. This ensures that the right person is doing the right activity and he is owning the right responsibility and it is following in the proper structure. Communication plan. Who gets spammed and how often? So again, in a fun way, it is said that who gets spammed. Generally, in you go to any project, okay, and you go to any methodology, we have to communicate a lot with key stakeholders, key business stakeholders, and there are some stakeholders which are really important. Let's say business stakeholders, we have to communicate with them consistently. We have to call them, we have to have a meetings, we have to send them mail. So this is a ongoing activity in any methodology in any project. Governance structure, escalation flow. Now, if if something is going wrong, we have to follow the governance structure and we need to go through the proper escalation flow to make sure that we are able to solve that escalation. Now, tools, Excel, Word, PowerPoint. These are the oldest vintage tools which are used in Waterfall. Now, stakeholder register is equal to wedding guest list, up RSVP. Yes, only 30% actually attended. So we have a, like, let's say in my current project, we have the list of stakeholders is 23, and I send the invite to all of them. And some of them said that they will be, like, let's say 50%, let's say 10, 11 people said yes, and remaining they did not respond to my meeting invite. And even only 30%, only four stakeholders actually showed up in the meeting. So this happens, and this is like very common thing to happen. Step 3, step by step, what is the role of a waterfall PM? That is, identified HSBC heads, HSBC business heads, IBM leads, and regulators. Kickoff, set who wants what info expectations. Now, this is like a simple and major crucial activity where we need to make sure that we are identifying the stakeholders. And if you are watching this series continuously, then you can go back to the HSBC project and you can understand and you can relate to what I'm trying to communicate here. So if you are watching this for the first time and this is your first video on this channel, then I recommend you to start step from the first video. Weekly updates are given to business heads, same way monthly reports are shown to regulators. Formal escalation calls when UK ignored India test team. Now don't think that this is a cricket match, okay? UK versus India versus England. So as we know, we have a team who sits in UK, and there's another team who sits in India. Sometimes because it's a global environment, and even in the office also, people ignore each other. So that is what happened. That is why we have escalated to to the responsible person that UK team has ignored the India test team. Golden rule. If it's not documented, it didn't happen. Simple, straightforward. If you watch Bollywood movies and in real life also you see that if you don't have a proof, you can't do anything, right? So everything gets documented, and you need to make sure that you document everything. And that's the responsibility of a business analyst. Project manager is responsible for few documentation, but major documentation is done by business analysts. Agile Scrum. In Agile, stakeholders aren't spectators, they are part of the team. When I compare Waterfall with Agile, why it is written here that they aren't spectators, okay? Because in Agile, we communicate more with uh, stakeholders than just that. If we go back to Waterfall, because in Waterfall, we plan in phases and we stop. But in Agile, it's not the case. It's iterative, repeat activity, continuous engagement. That's what I was saying. Backlog grooming, sprint reviews. Okay. Priorities change faster than Netflix trends. Yeah. So that is why Agile Scrum comes into picture. In Waterfall, we cannot change anything. In Agile Scrum, definitely change is accepted, but don't go blind that every change is accepted. We as a team, we need to understand what is the change and what is the impact of that change, time, budget, delivery. what impacts it is bringing. If that is aligning to the product goal and if it is within the stakeholder expectations, then definitely it is possible. But if it is creating a lot of mess, then changes are also not considered. Feedback loops is equal to survival. Now, why it is said feedback loops is equal to survival? Because every after every sprint, we are showing the product to the stakeholders, whatever functions we have developed, and that's what the survival meaning comes from. Why don't stakeholders like sprint reviews? Because they can't mute the meeting like emails. Yeah, so in the meeting, uh, everybody has to speak, and it is mandatory because it's an interaction between the entire team, and we are here to demo something. We are here to show something, and we need to gather the feedback as well. Now, documents we need in Agile. In previous videos also I have covered this point that yes, even if it is Agile, some kind of a documentation is done. And most of them who are new to the IT world, or if they have just worked in Waterfall, they are not able to communicate this. Like product backlog, stakeholder wish list that never ends. So product backlog is the responsibility of the product owner. It consists of everything like all the features, issues, bugs for that particular for that particular product to be developed. Sprint review notes, demo feedback capture, and one more thing we have called something sprint backlog as well. Same logic apply, all the features, all the functions, and any bugs, issues that are covered in sprint backlog. Definition of done. Everyone agree what done means? No, not done tomorrow. So definition of done is very simple here, that the work is completed and everybody agrees on what is done means. Persona mapping. So why Agile Scrum is favored by most of the companies? The reason is it is about the end user, and end user is nothing but the persona mapping, linking stakeholders to real users, right? Tools use Jira, Confluence, Miro. There are other tools also like Figma, Lucid Chart. So tools are Microsoft Visio. There are a lot of tools used, but from the project manager point of view, Jira, Confluence, Miro. Product backlog is equal to one more thing, like we have a OneDrive or SharePoint or shared drive, a drive where the documents are saved. Some people use Confluence also, and some companies use their own drive. Okay. Now, product backlog is equal to like my Netflix watch later list, infinite but rarely cleared. So when you watch uh, like Netflix or any other OTT platform, so you want to keep the watch later list, and the list becomes big. So that's how the product backlog is also done. But definitely, product backlog has to be cleared. Step by step. Now, what is the role of Agile PM? So, if you actually follow Agile Scrum framework, if you read Scrum guide, so there is no designation of a project manager also mentioned. But still, in the corporate world, there are few things adjusted, and it is a common practice. So that is why, let's say, if any person from non-IT, he learns from like some training, if he or she actually follow completely Agile Scrum, then they fail in the interview, because in real job world, Agile Scrum is not purely used anywhere in the market. It's always hybrid. But yes, there are very few projects where Agile Scrum is properly used. But let's understand you are using Agile, and you also have a designation of a project manager. Okay. Build a backlog in Jira with HSBC priorities. Now, what is the purpose of a backlog, like, and why we maintain it, why we built it? Because we are developing the product, and the product has some features, and those features are you like we write in user stories, And that is where we create a backlog and we set up the priorities and we develop the product. Sprint reviews every 2 weeks. UK and HK business heads couldn't ghost us. Ghosting means like they don't show up, but in sprint reviews, it is impossible. Like nobody can ghost this is the sprint review. So that is why waterfall is not effective that much as compared to Agile Scrum. Daily standups, IBM and HSBC alignment. Okay. So we have a daily stand-up, 15-minute stand-up, okay, where we cover things. Confluence, regulators got their serious reports. Yeah, I mentioned about the files using Confluence or SharePoint or OneDrive, whatever the company is comfortable with. Persona mapping workshops to keep users in focus, right? Again, it's about users and we have to think about the end user, and that is where persona mapping workshops takes place. Golden rule. Engage early, engage often, or risk being ghosted. Yeah, risk is everywhere, but if you follow the plan, like if you follow the process, engaging early, engaging often, and keeping stakeholders updated, being vigilant, then you cannot, you can definitely have some risks, and risk can be positive also, and risk can be negative as well, but it can be managed very well. Now, the third one, hybrid. So I always say hybrid is the methodology used across the world. There is no pure Agile Scrum project. And if it is there, I will say 1% of the 100% projects available in the market. In hybrid, you must be bilingual. Bilingual. What is the meaning of bilingual? Speak waterfall to regulators, compliance, reports, structure, and speak agile to teams, that is backlog, velocity, demos. Now, compliance report structure, this like it is from the business side, okay? And agile teams means what? Like our development Scrum team, from the agile Scrum point of view, that is backlog, velocity, and demos. It's like being a diplomat between two warning kingdoms. So uh, imagine a situation where there are two enemies, okay, and in between those two enemies you are standing, and you need to make sure that both of the enemies stay calm. So that's why you have to be diplomat and you have to make sure that you communicate well. Why did the stakeholders love hybrid? Because they got both PowerPoints and demos. So it's just it's a combination of old and new. That's what waterfall plus agile, and also they are able to understand the product very early as compared to waterfall. Slide 8, that is documents you need in hybrid. First one is stakeholder register, that is formal, regulator friendly. We have already covered in waterfall and agile, but now we are considering for hybrid, so it will be easy to understand. RACI metrics for accountability theater. Backlog plus burn down agile slide. So we have some burn down chart, burn up charts, charts also there. So we use that. Velocity reports are also there. So that is how it is done. Combined status dashboard, reports plus sprint metrics. Okay. Now we have reports and we have something called sprint metric. Reports means what? From waterfall, and sprint metrics from Agile Scrum. Tools, Excel plus Jira plus Confluence, PowerPoint, Word, so on. Hybrid reports is equal to Bollywood movies, drama, action, suspense, and an interval. So uh, it is like you cannot have any project completed without ups and down. Okay, if there are no ups and downs, then that means that the project was very simple, very straightforward, and that is what, like, mostly you will find complex projects in IT. Step by step, as a hybrid as a project manager, created stakeholder register plus RACI, that is from waterfall we have taken, build backlog, agile. Okay, so now here comes the twist. We have a product owner also who takes care of product backlog. Still, we have a project manager also. Now it depends upon the organization and how big the project, how complex is the project is. Sprint reviews bi-weekly, that means teams plus that is teams and steering committee monthly with like executives. Dashboards is equal to one-stop shop for compliance plus velocity. So we are talking about whatever the compliance is there, and also what is the velocity. Velocity is nothing but the amount of work is getting completed in the particular sprint. That is where we measure the velocity. Balance regulators demanding 100% control versus teams demanding 100% freedom. So this is kind of approach where you find in hybrid, but still it is the best methodology as compared to just going with waterfall or just going with agile scrum framework. Because if waterfall is considered, then end users are not valued, and of course they are valued, but we cannot change in between. So we cannot develop a product which is loved by end users. But in agile scrum, we can definitely make changes and we can consider end user. But then all the agile, all the agile scrum framework also sometimes does not work because we have to plan few things. So in nutshell, hybrid is the best approach for any project. Golden rule: speak agile to teams, waterfall to executives, smile at both. So simple rule, like when you're talking with Scrum team, we need to talk about Agile Scrum, okay, and the waterfall to like stakeholders, like because I mean we plan a lot first in hybrid, then we start with development, and if we feel that there is some change required, then we definitely change that, or some projects run without change also. So now the most important, waterfall versus agile plus versus hybrid at a glance. Aspect: stakeholder role defined upfront, formal, continuous, active, both formal and active. Docs, documents, registers, RACI plans, backlogs, burndowns, both sets combined. I'm not getting into the explanation because I have already explained it. Communication: weekly dash monthly reports, then daily stand-ups, sprint reviews, then combined in hybrid is dual rhythm, agile syncs plus executive reports. Best for compliance heavy projects. Yeah. So still there are projects which completely follow waterfall. Then very rare projects, very rarely you'll find fast changing needs agile scrum, but banking, regulatory plus innovation mix, or in most of the projects hybrid is used. Biggest risk: rigid, slow to adapt. It's a big risk because after, let's say it's a 1 year project, after 1 year only we are coming to know how our product will look like, and it can be a complete disaster after waiting for 1 year. Can overwhelm stakeholders because if things are very much unclear, it can overwhelm. But the benefit of agile scrum is, like, we are able to see the product every month, some part of it, not the complete product. Then complexity of managing two worlds, and definitely it is complex, but it is the most fruitful of all of the methodologies. Waterfall talks in reports, agile talks in stand-ups, hybrid talks in both, and still misses lunch. So it's not that in agile we just have stand-ups. Yes, there is some documentation is done. Okay. 10, that is like slide number 10, that is final tips for stakeholder engagement. Now we need to identify influence versus interest, that is power players versus just curious. Some of them will be key decision makers, or some of them are are involved in at a very high level, so their decision, their actions are really important for the project. but some of them, like very rarely, you'll find some people who are just curious, and most of them are required, and most of them play a crucial role. But again, based on the level of the stakeholder, we need to identify. Match communication style. Don't give Jira dashboards to regulators. Yes, we have to, like, whenever you're speaking to anyone, you need to make sure that you understand the other person very well, and then only you communicate. Because if you start talking about yourself, your way, then other person is not going to listen to you. Very simple. So always be in others' shoe. Very simple. Don't over document in Agile. Don't under document in Waterfall. Yeah, so documentation is very common. It can be in Agile, in Waterfall, but the message is you should not be documenting too much, and you should not under document in Waterfall. The biggest risk in Waterfall is if you don't document things. It's the biggest risk. Hybrid is equal to dance between structure and flexibility. Yes, we plan it, we structure it, and still we are flexible. That is what the hybrid approach is. Easiest way to lose a stakeholder, that is, forget to put them in the RACI. So don't worry, guys. I mean, it never happens. Okay. RACI, it is very important document. Okay. And yeah, it gets reviewed by uh, all the people. So at least I haven't seen anyone missing to put any stakeholder name. Okay. But yes, even if it is missed, it is covered. Okay. So that is how these all three methodologies are covered here, where stakeholder engagement is managed. I hope that you have understood the concepts. If you have liked it, please do share with your friends. Till then, take care. Catch you soon. Bye bye.